I went to surprise my fiancée at work with lunch. Instead, I caught her in the break room sitting on a coworker's lap with her shirt half unbuttoned. When I dropped the food and she spun around, I had the food balanced on one arm and my phone in the other, checking the building directory again, even though I already knew where I was going. I had been to Vanessa's office twice before, both times invited, both times careful not to overstay. This time was different. This time I wanted it to be a surprise. We had been tense for weeks, small arguments piling up, wedding stress mixed with work pressure, and I thought showing up with lunch would reset something before it turned into another quiet evening of forced normalcy. I signed in at the front desk, nodded at the receptionist, and walked past rows of glass offices filled with people who looked busy in the specific way office people always do. Nobody stopped me. Nobody questioned why I was there. That should have meant something, but I did not notice it then. I followed the sound of voices toward the break room. Laughter drifted out, low and casual, the kind of laughter that comes from comfort. I pushed the door open without knocking. The room was smaller than I expected. A fridge hummed in the corner. A microwave timer blinked. Vanessa was sitting on a man's lap on one of the chairs pulled away from the table. Her body was angled toward him, one arm resting along his shoulder like it belonged there. Her blouse was unbuttoned lower than it ever was with me. The man's hands were on her waist, not hesitating, not pretending. The container slipped from my hand before I consciously decided to let go. Plastic hit tile. Sauce splattered across the floor. The sound was loud enough to cut through everything. Vanessa turned first. Her face changed in stages. Confusion came and went, replaced by panic so fast, it was almost impressive. She slid off the man's lap, but did not step away from him. She moved toward the door instead, like she was trying to block it with her body. The man stayed seated. He looked at me like I was interrupting something minor, not like someone who had just been caught doing anything wrong. I asked what was going on. I asked it calmly. I did not raise my voice. I did not take another step forward. I stood exactly where I was, next to the mess on the floor, waiting for an answer that made sense. Vanessa started talking too fast. Words spilled out without structure. She said it looked bad. She said it was not what it seemed. She said work had been stressful and people leaned on each other. None of it connected. None of it explained why she had been sitting on another man like it was routine. I asked her again, slower this time. I asked why she was on his lap. She glanced back at him before answering. That glance told me more than the words that followed. She said it was a joke. She said I was misunderstanding something harmless. She said this was not the place for a scene. The word scene hit harder than anything else. Not denial. Not apology. Management. People were already gathering in the hallway. Someone had stepped back to make space, pretending not to watch while watching anyway. Phones were out. The man finally stood up. He adjusted his shirt like he was getting ready for a meeting. He introduced himself to me as if that was appropriate. He said his name was Trevor Hale and that he worked with Vanessa. He did not deny anything. He did not explain either. He just stood there, close enough that I could see how comfortable Vanessa was beside him. I asked Vanessa why she did not step away from him. She told me to lower my voice. That was when I realized the fight was already being reframed. This was not about what I walked in on anymore. This was about how I was reacting to it. I stepped aside so she could leave the doorway. She did not. She crossed her arms instead and told me I needed to leave. She said we would talk later. She said this was her workplace. I told her that made it worse, not better. Someone from HR appeared behind the small crowd. I had never seen her before, but she acted like she knew exactly who the problem was. She asked if everything was okay. Vanessa answered before I could. She said I was upset. She said I had shown up unexpectedly. She said she had tried to calm me down. I stood there listening to my own story being rewritten out loud. I said I was calm. I said I wanted an explanation. I said I was engaged to her. The HR woman looked at Vanessa, then at Trevor, then back at me. She asked if I would step outside to cool off. I looked at Vanessa again. I waited for her to say something that anchored reality back where it belonged. I waited for her to tell them who I was. She did not. She kept her eyes on the floor. Security arrived before the conversation could go anywhere else. Two men in uniforms walked in like they had done this before. They did not ask Trevor to leave. They did not ask Vanessa to explain herself. They asked me to come with them. Vanessa finally spoke up then. She said she just needed space. She said everything had been taken out of context. She said she would call me later. Later. They escorted me through the office while people pretended to work. I could feel the shift as we moved. I was no longer the fiancé. I was the disruption. I was the problem that needed to be removed so things could return to normal. Outside, the air felt wrong. Too open. Too quiet. One of the security guards handed me a card and said I was not allowed back on the premises without permission. I nodded like that made sense. Vanessa did not follow me out. I sat in my car for a long time without starting it. My phone buzzed twice. Both messages were from her. She said we needed to talk later when things were calmer. She said she could not deal with this at work. She said I had embarrassed her. That word again. Embarrassed. When she finally came home that evening, she did not look shaken. She looked irritated. She asked why I would do something like that without warning her. She asked why I dropped the food. She asked why I could not just trust her. I asked her why she stayed. She told me I was making it bigger than it was. She said sitting on someone's lap was not cheating. She said nothing physical had happened. She said the office environment blurred lines sometimes. I asked her if Trevor knew we were engaged. She hesitated just long enough. She said it was complicated. I told her it was not. She asked me to keep my voice down, even though nobody else was home. She said rumors spread fast at work. She said if I loved her, I would not make this harder. She said the wedding was already stressful enough. I realized then that she was not afraid of losing me. She was afraid of losing control of the story. I slept on the couch that night, not because she asked me to, but because being in the same room felt unreal. At some point after midnight, my phone buzzed again. This time it was not her. It was a message from a number I did not recognize. The person said they worked with Vanessa. They said they were sorry about what happened. They said I deserved to know it was not new. I stared at the screen until the words stopped blurring together. That was when I understood something else had already been decided long before I walked into that break room. And I was the last person to find out. I did not reply to the message right away. I read it, locked my phone, unlocked it again, and read it a second time like the words might change if I stared long enough. The sender did not introduce themselves beyond saying they worked with Vanessa. No threats, no drama, no exaggeration. Just a short apology and one sentence that kept echoing in my head. It was not new. I lay on the couch staring at the ceiling until the sun came up. Vanessa left for work early without saying goodbye. She moved around the apartment quietly, not out of guilt, but with the careful efficiency of someone avoiding an argument they felt was unnecessary. The door closed behind her, and the apartment felt hollow in a way I had never noticed before. By mid-morning, my phone buzzed again. Another message. Different number. Same tone. This one said they had seen us together at a company happy hour months ago and had assumed I was just a friend. They added that Vanessa never corrected anyone. I sat up. That was the moment the story shifted from betrayal to humiliation. Not because she had been caught, but because of how long I had been invisible. I texted back, asking how long this had been going on. The reply came quickly. Weeks. Maybe longer. Nobody could say exactly when it started, only that it had become normal. Vanessa and Trevor sitting close. Vanessa disappearing with him during breaks. Vanessa laughing in ways she never did at home. I asked why nobody said anything. The answer was simple. It was not their business. Vanessa called me during her lunch break. She sounded annoyed, not nervous. She said HR had talked to her. She said everything was under control. She said I should stop talking to people from her office if anyone reached out. I told her people already had. She went quiet for a second, then sighed like I was being unreasonable. She said people exaggerated. She said office gossip was toxic. She said I needed to trust her instead of strangers. I asked her directly if everyone at work thought she was single. She did not answer right away. She said labels were complicated. She said she did not talk about her personal life much at work. She said people assumed things. I reminded her she wore my ring every day. She said she took it off at work because it got caught on things. That was a new detail, one she had never mentioned before. That evening, we had dinner with her sister and a couple of friends who were involved in the wedding planning. The timing was unfortunate, but Vanessa insisted we go. She said canceling would look suspicious. She said everything was already tense enough. The restaurant was loud and crowded. We were halfway through ordering when one of her friends leaned across the table and asked me how things were going with the office situation. I did not know what she meant until she laughed and added that work romances were messy. Vanessa shot her a look sharp enough to cut glass. The friend realized too late that she had said something wrong. She tried to recover, said she meant stress, said work in general. But the damage was already done. The table went quiet in that way that only happens when too much has been revealed. I asked what she meant. The friend hesitated, then glanced at Vanessa. Vanessa shook her head slightly. Not a denial. A warning. The friend cleared her throat and said she thought I already knew. That sentence landed heavier than anything else so far. Not because it confirmed the affair, but because it confirmed the narrative. I was not discovering something. I was catching up. Vanessa pulled me aside near the bathrooms. Her voice was low and sharp. She said this was not the time. She said people misunderstood things at work. She said I needed to stop asking questions in public. I asked her why her friends thought I knew. She said they were confused. She said people mix things up. I asked her if she had ever told anyone at work that we were engaged. She said she did not see why that mattered. When we got home, she accused me of embarrassing her again. She said her sister had texted asking if everything was okay. She said this was spiraling for no reason. She said I needed to calm down. I told her I had been calm since the moment I walked into that break room. I told her she was the one avoiding reality. She laughed at that, not because it was funny, but because she did not take it seriously. She said I was making everything about myself. She said I had no idea what kind of pressure she was under at work. She said Trevor understood her in ways I did not. She stopped talking as soon as she said his name. I waited for her to correct herself. She did not. I asked her how long Trevor had been understanding her. She said it was not like that. I asked her if she had ever told him we were getting married. She said she did not owe anyone at work her entire life story. That night, my phone kept buzzing. Some messages were sympathetic. Some were awkward. One was blunt enough to make my stomach turn. It said that Trevor had brought Vanessa to a company party as his date earlier that year. It said nobody questioned it. I scrolled through photos attached to the message. Vanessa in a dress I recognized. Trevor's arm around her waist. No ring. When I confronted her with that, she did not deny it. She said it was easier to let people assume things than to explain. She said explaining would have been exhausting. I asked her if pretending not to be engaged had been easier too. She said I was twisting things. She told me she loved me. She told me this was not what it looked like. She told me I was her real life, not her work life. I asked her why her work life seemed to know her better than I did. She did not answer that. The next morning, I got an email from one of the wedding vendors asking to confirm payment details. The tone was polite but urgent. They mentioned a delay Vanessa had requested while sorting things out. I had no idea what they were talking about. When I asked her, she said she had handled it. She said she was spacing payments because of some expenses coming up. She said it was temporary. I realized then that decisions were being made without me. Big ones. The kind that assumed compliance, not partnership. Later that day, another coworker reached out. This one did not apologize. This one was angry on my behalf. They said Vanessa had complained openly about feeling trapped in a relationship that made her look settled before she was ready. They said Trevor had been presented as an escape, not a mistake. I confronted Vanessa again that night. Not yelling, not accusing, just asking her to tell me the truth without managing it. She told me she felt suffocated. She told me the wedding felt rushed. She told me Trevor made her feel understood. She also told me she never planned to leave me until things at work stabilized. That was when it finally clicked. I was not the backup plan. I was the foundation. The apartment did not feel like ours anymore after that. It felt like a waiting room. I slept on the couch again, not because I had nowhere else to go, but because I needed to see what else she would reveal when she thought I was still there. Around midnight, my phone buzzed one more time. A coworker sent a short message. No commentary, just a sentence. She said Vanessa had told people the wedding might not happen, but the promotion definitely would. I put the phone face down and stared at the dark ceiling again. By the time morning came, I knew something she did not yet realize. She thought this was damage control. I knew it was exposure waiting to happen. I stopped asking questions after that. Not because I was satisfied with the answers, but because I finally understood the shape of what I was standing in. Every time I asked, Vanessa adjusted the story. Every time she adjusted the story, something else surfaced on its own. I did not need to dig. The ground was already unstable. Vanessa noticed the change almost immediately. She asked why I was quiet. She asked why I was not reacting the way she expected. She said the silence made her uncomfortable. I told her I was just thinking. That was not a lie. The first thing that happened was small, almost forgettable on its own. A florist called to confirm a delivery address and asked whether the apartment would still be shared after the ceremony. The wording stuck out. Shared. Not ours. Not mine. Shared, like something temporary. I asked how they knew that. They said Vanessa had asked about changing the address a few weeks earlier, just in case. That same afternoon, Trevor stopped replying to Vanessa's messages. I did not know that at the time, but I could feel the shift in the apartment. She paced more, checked her phone more often, snapped at things that did not matter. When I asked if something was wrong, she said work was getting complicated. Complicated was her favorite word. It meant something was happening that she could not explain without admitting more than she wanted to. 2 days later, she told me she needed space. Not a break. Not time apart. Space. She said everything felt crowded and that we were suffocating each other. She suggested I stay with a friend for a few nights while she cleared her head. She said it like it was practical, reasonable, temporary. I asked her if this was about Trevor. She said she could not believe I was still bringing him up. I asked her if she was still seeing him. She said that question proved why she needed space. That night, I did not pack a bag. I sat at the kitchen table and watched her move around the apartment, rearranging things that did not need rearranging. She stopped wearing the ring entirely. She did not bother hiding that anymore. The next morning, a courier showed up with a folder addressed to Vanessa. The label had been smudged, but the name was clear. I did not open it. I did not need to. The return address was a property management company I recognized. One we had talked about months ago when we were joking about someday upgrading. I asked her about it when she got home. She froze just long enough. She said it was nothing. She said work-related housing options sometimes required paperwork. She said she was helping someone else look at a place. I asked who. She said a coworker. I did not push. I did not argue. I nodded and let it sit where it was on the counter. Later that night, while she was in the shower, her phone lit up with a notification. I did not pick it up. I did not need to. The preview text was enough. It was Trevor. Or rather, it was his name followed by a sentence that said he needed to be careful now and that things were getting too visible. Careful. Visible. That was the moment the entire structure became clear. Trevor was not panicking because of guilt. He was panicking because of risk. Whatever protection he thought he had was no longer guaranteed. The next day, Vanessa came home early. She was pale. She said HR had called her in for a conversation. She said someone had complained. She said people were blowing things out of proportion. She asked me if I had talked to anyone. I told her people talked to me. She accused me of sabotaging her. She said my presence had already damaged her image. She said I did not understand how fragile things were at work right now. I asked her what exactly she thought I understood. She said she had been trying to secure a promotion. She said leadership liked stability. She said being engaged made her look reliable. She said breaking things off too early would have raised questions. There it was. Not an admission of love. Not regret. Strategy. I asked her where Trevor fit into that. She said he was not supposed to matter. I asked her why she was sitting on his lap then. She said she lost control. She said she never planned for me to find out like that. That sentence stayed with me. Not that it happened. That I saw it. Later that week, the wedding venue called again. This time, they did not ask for confirmation. They asked for a decision. They said deposits were due. They said delaying any longer would trigger penalties. I told them to wait. Vanessa found out within an hour. She came home furious. She accused me of holding the wedding hostage. She said this was not fair. She said everything was already unstable enough without me pulling support. I asked her if she still wanted to marry me. She said that was not the question right now. That was the moment I stopped pretending there was still a shared future to negotiate. The final straw came unexpectedly. Vanessa's manager called me. Not directly, but through a message passed along by someone else who thought I deserved a warning. Leadership had started asking why Vanessa's fiancé was showing up during work hours. They wanted clarity on boundaries. They wanted to know if there were personal issues that could affect performance. She was not being protected anymore. Trevor disappeared entirely after that. No messages. No late nights. No sudden errands. He became unreachable. Vanessa noticed. She tried to play it off, said he was busy, said work was tense. But the panic crept in anyway. That night, she asked me to help her draft an email. Something calm, professional, reassuring. She wanted to remind management that her personal life was stable and that she was focused. I asked her if she wanted me to lie for her. She said it was not lying. She said it was framing. I told her I was done framing things for her. She stared at me like she was seeing me clearly for the first time. Not as a partner. As an obstacle. I packed a bag that night. Not dramatically. Just enough for a few days. I told her I was staying elsewhere while she figured out what she wanted. She did not stop me. As I was leaving, she asked one last question. She asked if I was planning to ruin her. I told her the truth. I said I was planning to stop protecting her. She did not respond. By the time I closed the door behind me, the wedding was already over. It just had not been announced yet. What she did not know was that the story she had been carefully maintaining had already started collapsing under its own weight. And this time, she would not get to decide how it ended. I did not expose anything the way people imagine exposure happens. There was no speech, no dramatic confrontation in a crowded room, no moment where everyone froze and stared. What happened instead was quieter and far more destructive because it followed the paths that were already there. Once I stopped protecting Vanessa, things moved on their own. The first consequence landed 2 days after I left the apartment. I got an email from the wedding venue confirming the cancellation. I had not announced anything publicly, but I had withdrawn my authorization and requested a pause. Vanessa tried to reverse it. She called them directly. They told her they could not proceed without confirmation from both parties. That conversation alone started questions she could not control. Her parents called me that night. Not angry, confused. They said Vanessa told them I had stormed out and was refusing to talk. They asked if everything was okay. I told them the truth, plainly, without embellishment. I told them what I walked into. I told them what followed. I did not ask them to take sides. They went quiet for a long time. The next morning, Vanessa called me repeatedly. Not to apologize. To negotiate. She said canceling things made her look unstable. She said people were starting to ask questions. She said this could ruin her professionally. She said Trevor had cut contact and that she felt abandoned. That part almost made me laugh, but I did not. I told her I was no longer involved in managing the consequences of her choices. By the end of that week, she was placed on administrative leave. Officially, it was framed as a review of workplace conduct. Unofficially, everyone knew why. Once HR started asking questions, The open secret stopped being protected. Messages surfaced. Witnesses spoke freely. Trevor's name came up again and again. He resigned before they could terminate him. Vanessa did not. She tried to frame his exit as betrayal. She told mutual friends that he had led her on. She told others that I had turned people against her. The problem was that none of those versions matched the timeline everyone had already seen play out. Her promotion was pulled quietly. No announcement. No explanation. Just gone. When her leave became permanent, she moved out of the apartment. She asked if she could come back for her things while I was gone. I told her to take what she needed. When I returned later, the place felt stripped of tension more than furniture. The silence was clean. I sold the ring the following week. Not out of spite. Out of practicality. I closed the joint account. I updated my address. I told the vendors the truth when they asked why things ended. Not details. Just that the relationship had not survived honesty. Vanessa tried one last approach through a mutual acquaintance. She said she needed closure. She said she wanted to explain herself without interruptions. She said she still believed we could have fixed things if I had been more patient. I did not respond. The final consequence came months later, quietly, the way real endings usually do. I heard she had taken a lower-paying position at another company. I heard her reputation followed her in ways she did not expect. I heard people remembered the story even when she tried to rewrite it. I also heard Trevor never contacted her again. As for me, my life did not improve overnight. There was no sudden relief, no dramatic transformation. What changed was simpler. I stopped feeling like I was standing in the wrong version of my own life. I no longer had to wonder what story people were telling about me when I was not in the room. I no longer had to compete with narratives I did not consent to. The clarity was not comforting, but it was solid. That was enough. I did not win anything. I did not take revenge. I just stepped out of a structure that depended on my silence to survive. And once I did, it collapsed on its own.